Hello, everyone, and welcome to this Applying to Medicine presentation. My name is Matthew Crichton. I am a Student Recruitment Officer here at the University of Dundee. And even though this is a pre-recorded presentation, we are delighted to see you guys joining us, I suppose, or for tuning in for this particular talk. Now, this is going to be a whistle-stop tour on the kind of things you should do and the kind of things you should not do when you're applying to medicine. Most of this information is basically applicable for dentistry as well. So even though it's entitled Applying to Medicine, if you're a prospective dentist, most of this information is pretty much identical for you as well. Hopefully you guys can understand me okay. I'm very conscious I've got quite a thick Scottish accent. So hopefully this is a good approximation of the Queen's English and you can actually hear and understand what I'm saying more or less okay. Now, I like to begin my presentations on studying medicine and dentistry with a brief riddle. So as we go through the presentation, you can ponder the riddle that I'm about to pose to you. And as you move through it, you can think of it. And at the end of the presentation, I will pop up and give you the answer to the riddle. But it's a medical related riddle, so it's more or less on topic. So the riddle is as follows. There's a father and a son who are driving home late one night from a football match. But it's driving rain and it's horrible wind, and unfortunately they lose control of the car, they spin off the side of the road and smash into a tree by the side of the road. Regrettably, the father is killed on impact. He is stone dead, unfortunately. But the son is critically injured. He's rushed to hospital. They push him through on the gurney. They bring him into a surgical theatre. They're about to start the operation when the doctor who is performing the operation looks down and says, "I cannot operate on this man. This is my son." How is this possible? If you know the answer already, brilliant, you're a clever clogs, or maybe you've heard the riddle before. But as we go through the presentation, just a little something for you guys to ponder, and I will reveal the answer at the end. Now, why would you want to go and study medicine or dentistry in the first instance? Let's face it, it's quite an attractive career. You've got quite a lot of social standing, quite a lot of power, and quite a lot of dollar as either a doctor or a dentist. People respect you. You get to do the awesome thing. If someone is choking to death in a restaurant and they shout, "Is there a doctor in the house?" You get to jump up and potentially save a human life, and presumably everyone in the restaurant will give you a big round of applause. There's a strong academic challenge. You're working in the sciences while still doing something practical. And basically you spend your entire professional career helping people, healing them, fixing them, and making them better again. If any of that sounds attractive to you, perhaps medicine is a career you want to pursue. I would hope so if you're tuning in for this talk. Now, there are two broad distinctions between the types of medical and dentistry courses that are available. There are traditionally taught courses, which are taught much in the same way that school lessons are taught, in lectures or in seminars and in small group settings. Usually, a traditionally taught course is quite didactic, where there'll be a lecturer at the front who has all the knowledge, and they will lecture you so you can acquire that knowledge and you take notes and you regurgitate that information in your exams and your practical assessments. Terrific. Another way of teaching medicine and dentistry is problem-based learning. This is where you're taught much more independently. You are supposed to direct the course of your own study. Instead of being given information, you are expected much more often to solve problems on your own. For example, you might be given a list of symptoms that a patient has and then encouraged to come up with your own diagnosis rather than being told, in this instance, this is what you ought to do. There's no better way to teach medicine or dentistry. It just depends on what teaching style is better suited to you as a learner. And again, it's about finding a course in a medical school that suits you best based on how they teach you this information. More often than not, these courses are kind of integrated. It means that some of it is traditionally taught, some of it is problem-based. About 10 years ago, many medical schools went entirely problem-based, so all their teaching switched to problem-based learning. More recently, a kind of blended approach of traditionally taught lectures and more problem-based solutions is what's common in the UK. There's also the option for something called an intercalated medical degree or dentistry course, where you take 1 year of your studies, you take a year out, and instead of studying medicine or dentistry, you would study biological sciences or biomedical sciences or physiology or anatomy or something along those lines, so that when you graduate from your course, not only do you get your medical degree or your dental degree, you also get an additional degree in life sciences or biological sciences or whatever it was you studied for that extra year. Some universities, that's compulsory. So I know, for example, at the University of Edinburgh, everybody does an intercalated degree. So their medical course just takes 6 years because everyone does that extra sandwich year to get this extra degree, which is intercalated. At other medical schools, they might not even offer an intercalated degree in the first place. It's up to you again as a student. If this is important to you, make sure you speak to the medical schools you're interested in to find out if you can intercalate and what subjects you can intercalate in if this matters to you. Now, when you are choosing a medical school or dental school, there are some things you want to take into account. Find out if the learning and teaching style suits you. There's no point in applying to the #1 ranked medical school and you turn up for day one to discover that it's problem-based learning, and that's just not the kind of learning that's going to suit you, and you're going to be miserable for 5 years of your life. Just not worth it. It's worth looking at rankings. So every university in the UK is ranked at a variety of different league tables based on student experience, the quality of our research, the quality of our teaching, etc., etc. Have a look at those league tables and try and find medical schools that score highly in the areas that matter to you. So if you're super interested in medical research, naturally you want to find a university which is ranked highly for its research in medicine. What I will say, folks, there are no bad medical schools in the UK. We all just teach medicine a little bit differently, and we're all a little bit different from each other. Every single one of them can train you to become a fantastic doctor. All you've got to do is find the one which is best suited to you, where you're going to thrive, where you're going to be happiest studying for 5 years. Medicine and dentistry can be quite physically, emotionally, and intellectually demanding courses. If you're not going to be in an environment that suits you, you're probably not going to enjoy your university experience much at all. Other things to bear in mind, check out what your placement options are. Does the university have access to a teaching hospital? If they don't have access to a teaching hospital, where will you actually do your placements? Where will you get practical experience if not in a teaching hospital? Will they have to send you somewhere else? Check out the location of the wider university. So just because it's got a cracking medical school is not the be all and end all. I've got a really good example from one of our own medical students where she was an absolutely phenomenal student, exceptional grades, but she turned up to study with us at the University of Dundee. And she discovered, unfortunately, that there was nowhere for her to stable her horse while she was studying medicine with us. So she was a wonderful student, was very successful with medicine, but she was also a keen equestrian, and she couldn't pursue that hobby while she was coming and studying with us because there was nowhere for her to put her horse in Dundee. I think now we actually do have stables at Dundee. I think that's quite a recent addition, but at the time that she joined us, she couldn't pursue this hobby. What you should take from it is look at the wider university as well. Don't just look at the medical school with the blinkers on. You see how I'm tying in the horse puns, but look at the whole university and make sure it's an environment where you're going to be happy. And the best way you can find out more about us is by attending our open days or engaging with us online. We'll talk more about that in a second or two. Now, when it comes to the admissions processes for medicine and dentistry, usually they are extremely competitive. So we're looking for excellent A-level results, excellent Scottish Higher results, whatever it is you study. Usually we only take the very best of the best. When you submit your UCAS application, you've got 5 UCAS choices, so you can apply to up to 5 different courses. Only 4 of those 5 can be medicine or dentistry. So for your 5th choice, you've got to come up with something else. Usually it's chemistry or biology as your kind of fallback position, just in case you're not admitted for medicine or dentistry. And we strongly recommend that you do use that backup choice. So we recommend people look at, for their 5th choice, life sciences, maybe like anatomical sciences, anatomy, things like that, which are related to medicine and dentistry, but are slightly lower entry requirements. Now, unfortunately, the entry requirements, as well as being high for medicine and dentistry, tend to vary slightly from university to university. So we all have little quirks, we all have slightly different admissions processes as to how we will select candidates for medicine and dentistry. So all of us will interview, but we use different styles of interview. Some of us might absolutely require that you have chemistry at A level or at Scottish Higher. Some of us might need chemistry and biology. Some of us might have not so stringent subject requirements. What you've got to do is try and find out about as many entry requirements for the different types of medical schools or dental schools you're interested in, and focus in on the ones that are going to give you the best possible chance of being admitted. So if you don't actually do A-level or higher biology, but you want to apply to universities that have it as an essential requirement, clearly you've made an error. So if you don't do biology, you'll need to zero in on the universities that are asking for chemistry. Okay. Now, there's various types of selection tests which are used, which we'll come back to in a second. To give you an idea of what we're looking for at Dundee, again, we'll talk more about our medical school in a second, but what we're looking for is 3 A's at A level, and we need you to have chemistry and 1 other science. We prefer you to have biology, but your 3rd A level at Dundee can be anything you like, as long as it is not general studies. For the equivalent at Scottish Highers, we're realistically looking for the 5 A's at first sitting at higher, and we need chemistry and one other science as well. So we're a bit more relaxed with the subjects that we need. Other universities might be a bit stricter. Now, there are various selection tests you'll need to complete if you want to become a medic or a dentist. So these are additional tests as well as your exams that you have to sit if you want to be considered for medicine or dentistry. The 3 most common tests that are used in the UK are the UCAT test, the BMAT test, and the GAMSAT test. The most common of all is the UCAT test. So there are 33 medical schools in the UK. Of those 33, 26 of them require you to sit the UCAT test. Okay, it's a multiple choice quiz, and like any standardized test, the more you practice the UCAT, the better at it you will become. How it usually works for admissions procedures is that we will take your UCAT test score and we'll take that into account when we decide who we invite to interview, or we'll decide in conjunction with your exam results or your predicted grades if your scores are high enough for us to bother considering you as an applicant. Usually, the higher you score in the UCAT test, the stronger an applicant to medicine you will be. Similarly, if you score highly in the BMAT test, and that's what universities are looking for, good for you. Usually, you're a more competitive candidate. Now, the tests are not mutually exclusive. You can sit as many of these selection tests as you want, but usually, most universities just require you sit the UCAT. So if, for example, you're only applying to universities that ask you to sit the UCAT test, there's no need for you to sit the BMAT test whatsoever. You can just concentrate all your efforts on the UCAT. There's various resources online where you can look up these tests and you can practice them. So the resource that we recommend is something called the Medic Portal. It's a website you can sign on to. I think you can get a free trial at certain times of the year, but they have loads of kind of past papers and resources for helping you sit the CAT test. And it's an important thing to remember, folks, as well. The CAT test is a separate test. So universities, we do not administer it. It's run by the UCAT organization themselves. All we do is take your results from the test and use that for admissions processes. We do not administer or schedule the tests ourselves. It is up to you to book onto these tests. And unfortunately, there is a slight fee if you want to book onto those tests. And you can see the kind of rough pricing structure and the dates from last year when these tests took place. We are firing through this, folks, because I know that it's quite difficult to sit and give attention to a non-live presentation. So if there's any further questions you've got about any of this, my contact details will be at the end, but we'll move on and discuss the style of interview. So as of this year, every university in the UK will interview you for medicine, although at the moment, obviously, many of us have had to move those to a virtual environment, but we are still all interviewing people. There's different styles of interview. So there's the one-on-one interview, which is pretty self-explanatory. You and one professor or one interviewer will sit in a room and they'll ask you questions. There's a panel interview where it's usually 3 or 4 members of a panel, usually senior doctors or academics, who will ask you questions in an interview format. There's a group interview, which is increasingly less common. There's very few universities will do a group interview for medicine or for dentistry. And finally, there is the MMI, the multiple mini interview. So this is what we use at Dundee. It's, I think, now the most common style of interview across the UK. And the way it works is a little bit like speed dating. Hopefully you were all too young to participate in speed dating at any point, but hopefully you also know what speed dating is. For the MMI, there's multiple stations. So you'll come down, you'll sit as though you were on a speed date, and for 10 minutes, you will have allotted time with one interviewer. They'll usually ask you questions on a specific subject. At the end of those 10 minutes, you'll stand up, you'll move to the next station, and you'll get 10 minutes on a completely different task or a completely different set of interview questions with a completely different interviewer. So usually, this is quite intensive. It's to try and get you thinking more dynamically, but it does mean that you can completely bomb one station. And in fact, I've seen candidates do this where they completely mess up the first or the second station of the MMI, but they end up doing very well overall, because their performance going forward at the other stations is very strong. We find this is a much, much better way of assessing you as students, as potential medics or potential dentists. And we find that a lot of our students actually really enjoy the experience, even though it's quite nerve-wracking at the time. The idea of moving from station to station and doing a different thing every 5 or 10 minutes is actually quite exciting. To give you an idea of the kinds of things you might be expected to do on an MMI interview, and again, this is the most common style of interview now in the UK, What we'll typically do on one of our stations is ask you about the structure of the NHS. On two of our stations, we will ask you about your personal statement. In the past, we have also had trained actors who have come in for one station and they pretend to be a difficult patient. So one station is just you interacting with a patient, by which of course I just mean a trained actor who pretends to be a patient. You have not lived until you've seen a 27-year-old man pretend to be an 8-year-old girl with a splinter in his hand, just to see how you react to that situation. We very often, particularly for dentistry or for medicine sometimes too, will have a manual dexterity task. So if you've ever played the game Operation, or you've ever done one of these games where you've got a metal hoop and you've got to try and move the metal hoop around a copper wire without touching the wire, usually some variation on a manual dexterity task like that. And as much as possible, universities have tried to convert these tasks to a virtual format for 2020. Now, by the time you guys maybe join us, everything might be back to normal. We might be able to invite you to our campuses to do interviews like this, but we were able to convert many of these tasks into virtual formats, just given the current COVID pandemic, which I'm sure everyone is more than familiar with. Now, what is it that actually makes a good application? All the things that you would expect tend to be in there. So we want a clear knowledge of healthcare in the UK. So we want you to understand the structure of the NHS and the role of a junior doctor or a junior dentist within that organisation. We want you to have strong performance outside of your academic life. If you've done something awesome outside of school, if you're an Olympic gymnast in your spare time, or you're captain of the school hockey team, or you're a prefect, or you're the head boy or the head girl, or you've done your Duke of Edinburgh or some awesome volunteering program or work experience, we want to know about all that stuff. Now, it's not just enough for you to say that you are a healer. You would not believe the number of people who put that they are a healer on their applications to medical school and they sound like some kind of witch doctor. We want you to be professional, we want you to be passionate, and we want you, like I said, to demonstrate clear knowledge of the subject and the discipline and the profession that you're about to embark upon a career in. Now, folks, from my presentation, you should have gathered that there's many, many ways to be admitted to medical school, and it's up to you to try and find the one with the right set of admissions criteria that's going to give you the maximum chance of being accepted. But if your application does go wrong, try and find out why. If you're rejected in your application, ask what it is that was deficient about you. So was it that your grades weren't high enough? Was it that your UCAT score wasn't high enough? Did you mess up in the interview? And try and look at ways, if you still want to pursue your studies, that you can fix these. So it might just be that you have to reapply the following year and resit the CAT test and get a higher CAT test score. We had one applicant who applied to us 3 consecutive years in a row, and the only thing that she kept getting wrong was the CAT test. And on the third try, after 3 years of applying, she eventually managed to get her CAT test score high enough that we could admit her. Now, she was a very determined person. I would say that if you're applying multiple times for medical school and you're continually being rejected, maybe look at an alternative route into medicine or for dentistry for that matter. But we do encourage multiple applications. Just because you've been knocked back in your first year, don't underestimate that you could still be accepted in a subsequent year. Other things you could do is you could complete another undergraduate degree. So many people who miss out on applying to medical school the first time around will complete a degree in biology or anatomy or life sciences. And after they've completed that degree, they'll apply as a graduate to medicine. Usually you're in quite a strong position there because you've already got an undergraduate degree, you're already a trained scientist. It takes a bit longer, it adds a couple of years on to your journey to becoming a doctor. But if you're very passionate and you're very focused and you just know that's what you want to do, it could be an option for some people. I'll tell you briefly about medicine at the University of Dundee, folks, and then we'll wrap up this presentation. But again, like I said, if there's any questions anyone's got, I'll put up my contact details, my email at the end of this presentation, and you're more than welcome to get in touch with me. Even if you're not interested in Dundee and you just want to ask me questions about applying to medicine, I'd be delighted to hear from anyone who's watching this. Now, medicine at Dundee, we have our own teaching hospital. It's one of the largest teaching hospitals anywhere in Europe, and it's based in Ninewells Teaching Hospital. That's where our medical school is situated. What that means is that right from day one, you're in a medical setting, you're in a functioning hospital, and you're surrounded by actual doctors, actual patients, and just immersed in a medical environment as soon as you come to us. We're about 50-50 as a blend between problem-based learning and traditionally taught medicine, and we are one of very, very few universities left in the UK who will give you a full body dissection in your first year. So year one, you come to us, and over the course of your first year, you will dissect a corpse from its neck all the way down to the tips of its toes. In my experience, there are two types of medical students. There are the type that I tell them full body dissection and they start rubbing their hands together gleefully like little Frankensteins. And then there's the type that kind of look a little bit squeamish, and I probably think those people maybe should reconsider a career in medicine. But if you're excited by that, brilliant. Dundee is one of the very few institutions that will teach you anatomy using an actual human cadaver, and we were still able to offer that even during COVID. We'll also offer you patient contact in your very first semester. So with everything going well, you will meet patients sometimes in the first couple of weeks on your course. You'll not be doing open heart surgery, obviously, you'll be taking histories, but we try to build that bedside manner and get you practical experience almost as soon as you're through the door. And as a consequence of all this incredible stuff, we are currently doing incredibly well in the rankings for medicine. So in the Complete University Guide, we are joint first with the University of Glasgow. Scottish universities tend to do pretty well for medicine, as you can probably tell. And in the Guardian University Guide, we are actually ranked #1 for medicine in the whole of the UK at the moment. As far as medical schools go, if rankings are important to you, we do pretty damn well in those rankings right now. Now, what you should do going forward, folks, clearly we want you to do well in your exams. Medicine is a very, very competitive program, as is dentistry, and we want you to do as well as you possibly can in your A-levels or your hires or your IB or whatever it is that you're studying. Please do start thinking already about booking open days. So one of the best ways that you can engage with universities is by coming along and seeing the campus. It's unlikely we'll be able to have you physically on the campus this year just because of the pandemic, but many of us are offering virtual open events where you can join us for virtual tours. We'll do virtual lectures. We'll hear from current students. And if you'd like to join us for our events at Dundee, you can see that we've got a little link there on the PowerPoint. You can punch that into Google and you can sign up for our Medicine Open Day. So our Medicine Open Day will be the 11th of June, 2021. We'd love to see as many of you guys as possible turning up. So please don't hesitate, jump on our website and find out if you can come along and join us. Now, at this point, before I say goodbye and thank everyone just for tuning in for the presentation, I will reveal the answer to the riddle. So the riddle of the father and the son driving home late one night in the car, and they spin off the road and crash. The doctor looks at the critically injured son and says, "I cannot operate in this man. He is my son." The answer, of course, is that the person operating on the boy, the doctor, is the boy's mother. Now, if you didn't get that, because perhaps maybe you think of doctors as men and you're maybe the person who's about to embark on what I'm sure will be a very successful career in medicine, maybe have a long think about maybe why that is and maybe how you can change that attitude, who knows? Or if you already got that, if you're a clever clogs, well done for answering the riddle, give yourself a big pat in the back and a big round of applause as you sit here watching this. Terrific. Now, folks, that is the end of the presentation, but on the right-hand corner of my screen, you can see my contact details. You're probably best to email me at the moment because that phone number will connect to a phone which is at the university campus, where currently I am not allowed to go because of restrictions. You can follow us on all the socials if you'd like as well, but it just remains for me to thank you very, very much for tuning in. I wish you the best of luck in your applications to medicine. Hopefully we'll see some of you here at Dundee, but even if not, I hope that wherever you are in the world, that you are happy, that you are healthy, you are very much staying positive, and you are very much testing negative. Take care, guys, and we'll see you very soon.